Hello there. We are so happy to have you with us for another enlightening edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Adrian Atkinson. It was the late Nelson Mandela who said, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall." Let's make the most out of what we have and never give up. We have lots in store just for you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Good day, I'm Lisa Rowe, and this is your JIS News for Wednesday, July 10, 2024. A comprehensive response to coordinate targeted and sustainable relief and recovery efforts was announced by Prime Minister Andrew Holness in Parliament on Tuesday. It's the Relief Emergency Assistance and Community Help REACH program. REACH will focus on the distribution of food and essential supplies and the restoration of utilities such as water, electricity, and telecommunications. It will also provide housing and reconstruction support, as well as economic recovery and restoration of livelihoods.
We are coordinating the continued distribution of food, water, medical sundries, and other essentials to citizens in the most affected areas. And I want to repeat that. The work is going on in the most affected areas. This includes working with organizations such as Food for the Poor, the Salvation Army, and the Red Cross to ensure that aid reaches those in need promptly. Let me also point out that we are focused on dengue mitigation activities to ensure that we do not have an outbreak at this time.
Under the Housing and Reconstruction Support component, Mr. Holness says drone technology is being used to fast-track assessments. The response, he indicates, will be crafted based on the findings, and this will be announced at a later date. In the meantime, the Disaster Assistance and Recovery Team, DART, of the Jamaica Defense Force has been mobilized in communities where major housing stock has been damaged to assist with rebuilding and recovery. DART is being supported by other units, including engineers, to cover areas such as Rocky Point, Portland Cottage, and the south coast of the island.
They will also be deployed in Hanover to assist with the recovery in Hanover, particularly in the town of Negril and other areas coming around to Westmoreland. The deployment in southeast Clarendon will also spill over into areas of Manchester and St. Elizabeth.
According to Mr. Holness, the initiative aims to rebuild stronger and more resilient houses that can withstand future storms.
We do not want to merely put up makeshift structures or patch up roofs in a way that leaves them vulnerable to the next storm. But more than that, Madam Speaker, in some of these areas that have been terribly affected, the longer they stay without intervention, it is the greater the potential for a break in public order. And therefore, we have to plan for that and therefore pre-deploy and pre-position resources to ensure that there is no break in public order.
Meanwhile, members of Parliament MPs will receive a further allocation of $4 million to assist with roof and structural repairs and economic recovery efforts for communities with great needs. An additional $3 million will be given to constituencies where the assessments are of greater damage. As part of early response measures, each constituency was allocated $5 million to assist with emergency relief, such as food and care packages. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the expenditure of the first allocation must be completed before the second tranche is given. He also strongly recommends a fair distribution of aid and urges the use of record logging for accountability of the disbursement of funds.
The distribution of relief must be done by all members of Parliament who are involved in it in a non-partisan way. There is no color or affiliation in a catastrophe and a disaster. While we must act quickly, we cannot suspend control and accountability of public funds.
Also coming out of Parliament, Prime Minister Andrew Holness revealed that the total damage caused by Hurricane Beryl has so far surpassed $12 billion. Preliminary estimates from the National Works Agency for Main Road Network is 10.25 billion Jamaican dollars, with assessments still ongoing. Approximately 500 parochial roads suffered damage of various degrees, and 200 main roads were blocked and cleared to single-lane traffic. On the matter of health infrastructure,
approximately 38% of our public hospitals sustained damage, including major infrastructural damage, mainly roof damage, requiring relocation of patients. A detailed report, including infrastructure damage to the health facilities of the country, was compiled with the total estimated cost to repair those damage reported to be in excess of 1.8 billion Jamaican dollars.
The Ministry of Education yesterday reported that approximately 100 schools were impacted, with repairs to cost $797 million, and the agriculture sector earlier this week estimated over $1 billion.
Hurricane Beryl has tested our resilience, but it has also highlighted our strength and unity as a nation. Together, we are determined to rebuild not just for today, but for a sustainable and resilient future.
The National Works Agency, NWA, says 95% of roads blocked following Hurricane Beryl have been reopened to at least single-lane access. Communication and Customer Service Manager at the NWA, Stephen Shaw, gave the update during a press conference hosted by the Ministry of Transport on Monday.
We have a few that remain impassable, and we are working to have those treated with as quickly as is humanly possible. Those that are impassable in the main are in the parishes of Hanover, Clarendon, and St. Andrew. We have reopened the roads in the parishes of Portland, Westmoreland, Trelawney, St. Anne, Kingston, and St. Mary. These parishes, as of now, have no corridor that remains impassable. So the team continues to work in St. Thomas, in St. Catherine, in Manchester, St. Elizabeth, St. James.
Mr. Shaw says the agency will be conducting damage assessments of infrastructure island-wide that may have been impacted by the storm.
We'll be inspecting our bridges to ensure that there isn't anything that is not visible to persons just passing by. The abutments, we have to make sure that they're assured. The piers, we have to check on them as well to see whether or not there was any damage, and where we determine that something might have happened, we'll certainly treat with those situations and treat with them as a matter of urgency.
Approximately 6,000 care packages have been distributed to residents of affected communities following the passage of Hurricane Beryl. Minister of Labour and Social Security Colonel Charles Jr. made the announcement earlier today at the weekly post-cabinet press briefing. He says other relief items have also been distributed to the affected residents.
We've provided almost about 800 tarpaulins, 500 mattresses. And this is complemented, as I said, with the aid from NGOs who have also been with us house to house. If you can assist, reach across. Do not wait for a neighbor to ask. Many need the support, but cannot muster up the voice to say, please help me. This is the time for you to step up and to lead in your community.
Minister Charles Jr. also revealed that around 2,000 household assessments have been completed. He indicated that the figure would have been much higher, but assessment efforts were hampered by communication challenges.
For our officers that are going into or who are in Clarendon and some areas of St. Elizabeth, they cannot communicate on either of the providers. And so it has been difficult. So we expect that over the next couple of days, we'll be in a much better position to give more accurate data.
And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Lisa Rowe. Thanks for watching.
One of the things Beryl has taught us is that you can never be too prepared. We are well in the hurricane season, and your safety and well-being should be your number one priority. Start by ensuring where you lay your head is sturdy and safe.
It is clear that some Jamaicans, have chosen to live in areas which are dangerous to live in, because those areas are susceptible to weather events. People have chosen to live on hillsides that are precarious. People have chosen to live very close to river banks, and some even build in river courses. We have quite a number of communities that are perched precariously again on gully banks. We give God thanks every day that when we have these major weather events, we have not seen any significant loss of life or damage. But I would say that it may not always be the case, and I would use this opportunity to urge Jamaicans that we understand the issues of settlement, we understand the issues of housing and where you can find marginal land to live on and so forth, but you should, in seeking to settle, in seeking to live, to find a place to live, take into consideration the environmental issues and the climate change issues, particularly the environmental issues having to do with your access to water, with the stability of the slope. If you have to clear the land, how will that affect the stability of the slope? And then pay attention to the climate change issues. You're going to have frequent weather events. And what we notice about these frequent weather events is that they are of high intensity. So normally we would have a 50-year weather event. But we're now having these 50-year weather events once every 2 years. And if that is the case, then it is a creeping destruction of the infrastructure, and the probability of your house, which is built in a danger zone, being damaged. Government will try to respond, but the government will not be able to respond to everybody's needs all the time. So we have to be smart about it. Government has to enforce as well, has to put down its foot to say, listen, we understand the issues, but for your own safety, you just can't build in these areas anymore. We will have that conversation with the people and enforce the legislation that are in place, and maybe we would have to put in new legislation.
Do you know what gross domestic product GDP is and what determines a country's GDP? If your answer is no, stick around to find out in this next feature.
Using Jamaica's nominal per capita GDP at the end of fiscal year 2023-24, Madam Speaker, and our GDP per capita at the end of fiscal year 23-24 is projected to be roughly $7,000 US. Using the GDP figures from Stockton and the population data that we have and the closing exchange rate, it has gone up. Anybody notice? It's now $7,000. But Madam Speaker, we have a lot of catching up to do, because Trinidad and Barbados, for example, are moving at the same time, and they are now at $20,000. But you're seeing, Madam Speaker, we're stuck at the breaking level for a long time, and nobody has been noticing. But today, the per capita GDP is $7,000 US.
Major praise for the trajectory of our gross domestic product. But what exactly is that? Do you know?
Why you gonna put me on the spot like that? I really don't know. I really don't know. We don't say anything about it, honestly.
Gross domestic product.
No, I feel don't see ideas.
If I remember correctly, it's gross domestic product. I'm not very familiar with it, but I do know that it has something to do with the overall output of the economy, and I know that the better it is, then overall it reflects the quality of life that the citizens live.
Well, thank you for that comment. And so there's no real easy way. I would say the definition, she's absolutely correct, that GDP is a gross domestic product of a nation or economy. When you look at what GDP is, it's really the spend, overall spend of consumers. You take into account all the investments in the country. You add in the government's spend, less the taxes that they have collected. And then you take into account a country's exports and imports. So for a country like Jamaica, our exports tend to be a lot less than our imports. We're heavily driven by imports, so it's a negative number. So when you take that from all of our consumer spending and our investments, you get to what they call a GDP, or gross domestic product.
And this GDP is divided by the number of persons in the country to give the per capita or head count of the population. Now, sometimes you may hear nominal GDP or real GDP. Nominal GDP is the total value of goods and services produced within a given period annually. However, real GDP is adjusted to factor inflation, and that's really to say, can $1,000 purchase the same thing today that was purchased last year?
There was a period within that time that there was no growth. In fact, there was a negative, right? And so when you look at it, and you look at the last couple of years, in particular coming out of COVID, it's quite encouraging, and it gives a good indication to economists where the trajectory of the economy is going, which is in the right direction, which really means that we're able as a country to pay our bills, to service our debts, and to encourage productivity.
So you might be wondering, what does GDP have to do with me? Well, you see, it's a cycle, and all of us have a role to play in that cycle.
From a macro level, when a country is looking at how does it stimulate productivity, how does it get or put back money into the economy? Because remember, consumer spending, it only happens if they have the money to spend.
Now, how is the government able to drive productivity in the economy? There are two ways. One is to export much more than we import, which is not the case for us, not yet anyways. The other is if our consumer spending and our investments are high enough to allow the government to spend more money as well. Hence, you may see the government pumping money back into the system from time to time, by way of wage increase or a tax break to help especially low-income earners in this regard.
For example, the recent budget where the government said it's going to increase the threshold on income tax from 1.5 to 1.7 million. That actually is pumping $8 billion back into persons who are at the low income level that they can spend back into the economy.
Thus driving consumer spending that in turn drive productivity and a rise in the GDP.
Our unemployment is down to 4.5%. And that's at the same time that we're seeing GDP growing at a rate of over 10% year over year. So it's a correlation between the two. So if the government is spending more, it's going to affect the GDP, right? But in an effort for it to spend more, whether it's in giving back in increasing the threshold or to give back in reducing any sort of duties or income tax, it's driving the economy by putting money back into the system, allowing people to either save or to put that money back into spending. So the government spending, it depends on how it wants to spend it, whether it's putting it back into revenue avenues is going to drive productivity, which in turn drives the economy.
So how can Jamaica raise its GDP?
Speaking from a private sector point of view, the thing that we really look to focus on is one is consumer spending, but also is the exports and imports of a country. So if you look at Jamaica, we rely heavily on imports, and our exports, really our focus has always been on local, servicing our local economy and servicing the diaspora by extension. So our exports have never been as great as our imports. And in fact, probably our imports could be anywhere from 8 to 10%, 10 times that of our exports. And so that would affect our GDP.
Which brings us back to the finance minister's point on our current GDP status. You'll remember he enthusiastically said that the country's per capita GDP is roughly about $7,000 compared to that of our Caribbean neighbors, which is $20,000. So why is he excited?
I think we should celebrate the fact that we are on a good trajectory in that relation. I think we do need to look at countries like Trinidad and Barbados, who GDP are 3 times ours. And look at what it is that they are excelling at. And to me, it goes down to their ability to manufacture at a low cost and their ability to export into territories that are not just where their diaspora is. I agree. I think that there's things that we should be celebrating.
Some parents are busy looking at school transfer after the primary exit profile PEP results. Don't forget that the Ministry of Education's policy is that general transfers of students between schools are not facilitated, except in specific adverse circumstances. If you are one such parent, this is how you should go about the process.
The Ministry of Education and Youth is responsible for the placement of students who sit the primary exit profile PEP exam, which assesses students' knowledge as well as critical thinking and communication. Students are placed based on the results of the primary exit profile PEP tests given in grades 4, 5, and 6. The parents' or guardians' top choices from a list of potential schools. While the Ministry of Education and Youth does not generally assist with student transfers from one school to another, requests will be supported in circumstances of proximity. This is when a child may have been assigned to a school where he or she would have to travel considerably long distances from home to school. However, in cases where you are seeking transfers for children who have already been placed in schools by the primary exit profile PEP placement process, it is your responsibility as a parent to contact a school that is willing to accept your child or children. Here are the steps to allow for a smooth transfer process. Submit a letter of request for transfer to the school desired. The school should then provide you, the parent or guardian, with an acceptance letter. Take that acceptance letter to the school where the child was originally placed. The school administrator must then provide a release letter. You are then required to write a letter addressed to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education and Youth, requesting approval for transfer. This letter must be accompanied by the acceptance and release letters and should be taken to the respective regional office. The Ministry of Education and Youth, through the regional offices, will send approval letters to the accepting and releasing schools within 1 week from the date received. Make sure you have the necessary paperwork from the primary school to speed up the procedure. And that will be the child's last 2 reports, grades 5 and 6. A recommendation from the principal, the official scoring sheet from the Ministry of Education and Youth with the child's grades for PEP. Other documents such as the child's birth certificate and immunization record should also be made available. And keep in mind that it is your duty to get in touch with a school that will accept your child. Follow the transfer procedure to help your child enroll in the institution you believe will give him or her the best chance for a successful academic career.
Schools are closed and the children are at home. The summer days are in full swing, and what better way to put their minds at ease than some recreational activities?
Structure and regularity are good remedies for manufacturing calmness in times of distress. So here's a structure for a child. Let's start with creating a schedule that lays out time for study, chores, eating, of course, fun activities, and downtime. Incorporate new gaming activities into your child's routine, like puzzles and game boards such as Monopoly and Ludi. Charades and ABC Fast and Slow, Chinese Skip and Jump Ropes are also entertaining games that have the added benefit of getting them moving so that they're exercising without even realizing it. This works better for younger children. They are attracted by a range of colors and experiments. So how about you engage them with some drawings and paintings, bringing their artistic sides to life? Creating science projects is also a good way to work the minds while engaging your children. Music is perfect to get the young ones up and engaged. Plus, there are many studies suggesting that learning music helps children with their academics. Some musical games to explore include karaoke, musical chairs, and musical trivia. This is also a good way to teach them about their rich musical heritage. This may be the perfect time to teach your children how to prepare their favorite meals. If they already know how, then all the better, getting expert hands on board. So here's the plan. Get a cookbook and get them involved. This could make them feel that they are making a valuable contribution to the family. As a parent, you'd already know the value in exercise and working out, so how about encouraging your children to create a workout routine, do some yoga or dance routine, and keep them moving. It might not be such a bad thing to allow your children to keep in touch with their peers or friends and keep a strong support network. If they wish to call or text friends and families, let them do so. Just monitor them. Socializing helps to regulate your mood and stay grounded, and that's as true for children as it is for adults. Some of these activities require the involvement of a responsible adult, but for those that do not, monitoring is still important for safety. Remember that different activities apply to different age groups, so ensure that you check on them in between all their playtime activities and ensure that all is going according to plan. Also, remember you can split the monitoring work between parents and/or older siblings. One parent or older sibling can monitor the children in the morning, while another person takes over in the afternoon. With that said, all the best.
And that's a wrap for us here on today's edition of Jamaica Magazine. Be sure to join us again tomorrow at the same time on this same station for another program that's packaged just for you. Catch up with us on our website, jis.gov.jm, for this and more offerings. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Adrian Atkinson, reminding you that life is what happens while you are busy making other plans.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.